Sorry, had my Klingon teeth in. Today we're talking about Season 5, Episode 1, Apocalypse Rising. What's up, everybody? Welcome to Keith and Mike Watch Deep Space Nine. Today is the season premiere of Season 5. We've got a facelift. We didn't do full Klingon, because I left my makeup kit in the theater, unfortunately.
Way too expensive.
Very, very expensive. But we are very excited to be, here we are, just going into the last 3 seasons of Deep Space Nine. Mike, how are you feeling?
This is the one, right? So all I've read and all I've heard from you, the viewers of K&M, of Deep Space Nine, even from friends who don't listen to our show, Keith, but keep asking me where we are, which is always interesting to me. They're like, oh, hey, where are you guys in the series? I was like, easy way to find out. There's a couple clicks and you're in. They want to know what we're talking about.
Is it easy? I mean, do our friends really find it easy to watch us talk for 2 hours?
I'm just curious what they would think, like how screen accurate my portrayal of myself is. I'm curious. Jen seems not to be too confused, but I think she actually likes this version better. Yeah.
Everybody likes this version better. This is by far the best version of Mike.
That's true.
If I could live my friendship with you in real life, holding up a camera at you, we would get along great.
Keith, AKA exactly what we do.
Yeah, that's the only.
I think in real time, since the airing of this show began, I have seen you 3 times in person.
That's true. Well, which is 3 times more than we did the 5 years before.
When we lived together, when we lived together or in the same neighborhood. Anyway, they all argue over seasons 5 and 6 as to which is the superior season. So, Sophie's Choice that I am not a part of just yet, but regardless, I know that I'm getting my cake and then might eat it too next season.
Yeah, it's really exciting, and I think that there are, I think there are arguments to be made for season 4. I really liked season 4, and I also I think season 7 is underrated. So I think
also I have to
got a lot of good stuff coming.
I have to state as we get into the new season two things, sort of as a state of the podcast. 1, we are quickly approaching 2,000 subs, which we would love if you could tell some friends, blast out to the chat boards. We get people joining us late. There's some people just in on season 2 now. Awesome. Whether our numbers go up or don't, I don't even care. It's awesome, the community we've built. I'm happy about it. But if you want to tell a friend, please do. The more the merrier. But that said, 2 things have happened over these past 5 seasons, Keith. 1 being, I'm all in. I'm not going to full-on say that I've swapped over to being a full Trek guy. It's not like I'm watching all the different series happening concurrently, although I am watching Lower Decks, and I got some stuff going on.
You can only watch Lower Decks up until
I know you've told me season 2. I'm already sensing that I should chill out.
Yeah.
But the toys and the figures and the things, I'm really getting. Yeah, it's really starting to tweak a lot of the itches and you didn't prep me for that. I thought I was just going to be like a sort of a voyeur on the other side of the
whatever. I'm too cool for school.
That's 1, but 2, and I have to tell you the pride this brings to me. So we had look, not everything is for everyone. I get it. But we had somebody pop into one of our episodes earlier on and basically be like, you know what? Deep Space Nine is trash.
Oh, we're gonna address it.
And
don't worry.
I was about to go to write and not. I am the good cop when it comes to our comment section.
Oh, I'm
generally.
very much the bad cop on the comment.
And I was just gonna say, hey, it's not everything's for everyone. But thanks for stopping by. Thanks for your time. But let me tell you, the K&M acolytes, the Deep Space Nine truthful, went in and took care of that business for me. Now, would I have probably worn more softer gloves? Maybe. But you know what?
Hell no.
As long as you're not outright cruel, You say what you got to say. You protect. You guys have come in my defense. You've come to Keith's defense. You've come to the show's defense. We appreciate you. And if you want to take your support to the next level, you can do so. You can always join the Patreon at patreon.com/KNM.
Yes, indeed. All right. So we're going to begin this, as we always do, talking about last week's episode. And it's going to be it's going to be fun. What the hell was that called?
Broken Link.
Broken Link, yes. Going to talk about Broken Link. And while I do, Mike, you're still distorting in my cans.
Oh, I'm
it's
so
not
sorry
that
about
you're
that,
too loud. It's that your inputs are distorting. All right. So anyway, here is what you had to say. Now, if you want me to read your amazing comments, there's two different ways you can do that. One, you can be a patron at patreon.com/KNM. Comment in the or a link in the show notes below, or you can leave us a super thanks using the YouTube whatever super thanks thing, and I will read your comment that week. Here is what we had to say about Broken Link. Joshua Cronin says, "It makes me so happy to see Mike realizing how amazing Deep Space Nine is, as we were just talking about. By far the best Trek out there, and I do love all Trek. Just the storytelling is so grand. Chef's kiss. I love this chapter in the story, the season 4 finale, with some great performances. 89 self-sealing stem bolts. Our good friend Jason Moe. I got something coming in the mail today from Jason
me too.
Moe. I can't freaking wait. Who says, "Oh my gosh, your skit about the tick-tocking Bajoran had me rolling." It reminded me that we even did that. This is a great Odo episode, a very good Deep Space Nine episode, but I find it a little bit lacking as a season finale, if I'm being honest. It's possibly the least memorable of all Deep Space Nine season finales to me, which is odd since I hold season 4 in great regard. Even the shocking cliffhanger moment at the very end didn't quite hit for me. I think it would have been more surprising and impactful if they'd revealed that the president of the Federation, or the head of Starfleet, was actually a founder instead of Gowron. I award 81 stem bolts. That said, this finale does set up a very cool season 5 season premiere. Yeah, it does. Which we'll get to enjoy in just a few short months when the next season starts. Oh, wait! We get to watch it right friggin' now. YouTube viewer always has a lot of thoughts, says, "I think the chest grab speaking, we had a very interesting discussion happening. I think the chest grab on O'Brien was very dumb." I agree. "I think the writers get itchy if they don't inflict something awful on O'Brien at least one every 3 episodes." Yeah, that's true. "This was a great episode, and the unprovoked and weird-looking attack is the only error in a great episode." I agree. "The Bajoran restaurateur that was flirting with Odo, I'm really disappointed we never see her again. Slight spoiler. Even if they don't want to have an ongoing romantic subplot with her, I would have liked a short scene of her introducing Odo to a wide variety of flavors and tastes. If you know what I mean, that's me. Speaking of food, Sisko and Bashir were warned that they could be waiting days on the planet, on the goo planet. They didn't bring any rations or water or a chamber pot to pee in. This is a minor wormhole." I thought that's the exact same thing. "If Sisko wouldn't let Bashir skip a rock in the Great Link, he'd probably disapprove of peeing in the Great Link." Hilarious.
I think that's more than a minor wormhole. I think that's strong.
Don't cross the swords. I mean, I guess they could have beamed up if they needed, but like,
That's very fair.
number one to beam up, I've got to do a number 2. So, YouTube viewer continues, "I know it's terrible. I am still on the fence for leaving Odo with his original face on whether or not that was a good idea. If I had been consulted as a writer, I would have made him Bajoran and have the female changeling make a snide comment, 'Kira will still not love you.'"
Damn.
That's cold. I like it, though. "You could have had
Make it
open
department's
side
like,
plots."
yeah, but we already have the prosthetics.
That's right.
The molds are
I mean,
done.
hold on, right there. So you could have had open side plots later as Odo stands out from other Bajorans for not wearing an earring. Bajorans are spiritual and creative, and Odo is neither of those things. It opens a lot of doors to examine Odo's character and Bajoran culture. I like that. Actually, I think that's really smart. Remember, Odo is basically a child or adolescent changeling, and the other changelings are thousands of years old. Not only that, but it later is implied, if not outright stated, that Odo is a slow learner for a shapeshifting, even relative to other changelings. Yeah, I think we have addressed that a little bit on the show. 96 out of 100 self-sealing stem bolts. Our good friend JD says, Mike, have you seen that they were making a new Karate Kid sequel?
Mm-hmm.
Also gives us information here that I should have remembered, but I don't. My brain doesn't work great. The Arcanus sector events of 100 years ago is what has been shown on Discovery and Strange New Worlds, which is what the Klingons are referencing. Although in the episode, they said 400. So there might be continuity error there, because it's not 100, it's 400. The scene of the promenade between Odo and Quark would be in my top 10 best scenes of Deep Space Nine, of Quark saying goodbye to Odo. It's really great. It's so perfect, he says. Now, the whole thing of Odo walking is odd to me. They have shown wheelchairs and gurneys before. I feel like they could have had Odo on a gurney, just pushed it to the Defiant so much faster. Yes, they definitely could have. My headcanon is Odo would not allow that. Part of his dignity is to do the walking himself. Like, I think that speaks to his own ego would not have allowed him to go in a wheelchair. He continues, okay, let's not mention the fact that Garak held his own in a fight with Worf. Worf is not some yellow belt 12-year-old. Dude knows how to fight, and Garak held his position. Impressive. I agree. I hate the baby Hitler thing. Next time you go to your room with your 17-year-old Hitler, because I wouldn't hesitate to take out 17-year-old, was probably a little shit and deserved it. Not the baby. Okay, that's fair. That'd be difficult. Yeah, all right, 17, let's say 18, 19. He's got his little stash is only halfway coming in.
Let me tell you, in New York City, in my whole 22 decades there, I got held up once, and that assailant was like 14 years old. So guess what? When they're not a baby, I'm not sure you could achieve the mission. That's the whole point of the baby thing. At least you know, okay, I can handle this.
Look, I saw you got destroyed by like a 12-year-old in a football game once, so...
I wouldn't say destroyed. I think internally destroyed, but I think outwardly I surprisingly stood on my feet.
You stayed on your feet, but you made that noise that signifies my organs just compressed, but I'm trying to pretend like that didn't happen.
Well, there's a field in Brooklyn that still has my soul, because it got left behind.
It 100% did. Anyway, that's just for us. Anyway, JD finishes, this is such a good episode. Gonna go 93 self-sealing stem bolts. Harry Pothead says, there's no way to avoid giving this one the full 100 stem bolts. It's a complete wrap up to the season. Everything's nice where we want it. It's a great thread to pick up next year. Gowron's a goddamn changeling, and he must be stopped. Kevin Miles gives it a 95. Yes, Mike?
YouTube viewer was a long-time first time in the watch-along this week, and
oh, no kidding.
He showed up, and it was great because I had a response, and my favorite comment of his this week was, holy ish, I can't believe I haven't been watching Mike live watch-along since the beginning. So I'm glad you're entertained. Welcome to the watch-along team.
It's all archived there on patreon.com.
If you can't join us live, you can still there. And also,
right.
We'll talk about when we get there.
And lastly, as you mentioned, I just thought we should get a shout out to JS09, who said, my God, this show is shiz. Star Trek ended with The Next Generation. Thanks for taking the time to stop by and comment on our show. Sure.
Okay,
all right.
Cool.
So let us now talk a little bit about this actual episode that we're talking about today, which is, of course, Apocalypse Rising, which aired on September 30th, 1996, all the way deep into September. Football is cooking. The 96 season, the Giants were terrible because Dave Brown was making us bad. And we were listening to, this one I'm excited to hear Mike's amazing performance of. And I do believe it's going to need to be choreography inclusive.
Oh, okay.
because we were listening to Macarena. Los del Rio.
Oh boy, how am I going to do this and not be offensive? Mike doesn't remember the Spanish words. He's not going to do any accent or attempt Spanish. He studied it for 10 years in high school, but he still don't remember.
Where was the geography?
Oh, I didn't want to show you my dead finger. Very self-conscious as it crumbles into oblivion.
People have been watching your dead finger, hashtag Mike's dead finger, for the last 2 months.
I think you got another 6 to 8 to go. My Google searching has shown me that this is a long recovery.
Do we need a finger cam? I think maybe we do.
No. Although, if it's an excuse to buy another doodad, I'm in.
Exactly. It's like a ring cam, but it's actually on your ring.
Yeah. No, nice. Well done.
Great. Well, Mike has no concept of privacy. There's cameras all over his entire house, 24. So if you want to hack into Mike's apartment and watch,
my IoT network is locked down. But when Jen goes away, I turn the cameras off so that I have I got to do what I got to do.
So why are the cameras on when Jen is home?
They're not. Well, they're on, but they're not it's a whole thing, man. Just relax, all right? If you want a password, I'll get you in, all right? If you want to see what's up.
No! Actually, the opposite. I'm arguing for less All right. Anyway, the top movie, which, Jen maybe should consider being a part of this, was First Wives Club, who took in $15 million. Mike, what was on TV tonight?
Keith, it's September. It's all happening. Let's start with Monday Night Football. Your Dallas Cowboys defeated the then Philadelphia Eagles 23-19. Hate it. Keith, CBS, there was a brand new episode of Cosby, which was Bill Cosby's next show, which I've forgotten about.
He did another show?
They made another show. This was episode Neighborhood Watch. It was the leading of the primetime hour on CBS, 8 o'clock, Cosby.
Wow, I would have thought he would be too busy.
I decided not to Google it, but it was heading up the CBS juggernaut of Cosby, followed by Pearl, followed by Murphy Brown, and I think the final few seasons, followed by Sybil, followed by Chicago Hope. So that's a strong lineup that night. NBC was giving Jeff Foxworthy his start over there on NBC, which ended up being quite a run for that. Also a show called Mr. Rhodes. But
I vaguely remember something about that.
What I had forgotten about, Seventh Heaven was rocking the WB.
Oof, so many problematic people on TV that night.
But Keith, what wasn't problematic was a show that I had forgotten about until just now. Do you remember that old movie with Michelle Pfeiffer called Dangerous Minds, and Coolio had the
I
Gangster's Paradise?
I don't think I watched it. As much as I love a white savior movie,
but
I did not see it.
What's great is that they were like, you know what, this movie did okay. What if we just take the song and the concept and make it a TV show? And ABC tried it. The pilot aired tonight. And let's just take a look at their 30-second teaser to remember this gem. Can you remember? You were not going to, but instead, they couldn't get Michelle Pfeiffer, it turns out.
No, of course
not. But who
not.
would be like an inner city teacher?
Wait,
I
have a guess.
It's actually synchronicity because she is also appearing, it was a female, also appearing in a movie that is currently in theaters. I'll give you that hint.
Was it Heather Graham?
Interesting. Heather Graham was probably a child at this point, but let's see if you can remember from this.
Right. Oh wow, TV quality was so good then.
I know, we have to hit play. Okay, that's clearly not working.
We've got audio. I mean, but what a great screenshot though. We can make this out. All right, I'm gonna get Ashley Judd.
Okay, let's try it now. See if we can see this.
All right.
Nope.
Against the wall.
And we cannot see this TV.
All right, they won't let me do it. So, and it was Annie Potts.
Annie Potts.
I know, crazy. I don't know why I can't. Man, they really are locking down what you're allowed to show anymore. But yeah, Annie Potts was the head. I don't know how many episodes it ran. Let's see if I can see.
I'm guessing not many.
Yeah, it wasn't a great thought, but okay,
I mean, those TV adaptations, how many of those have actually worked?
It's
like
premiered.
Like Stargate
September.
worked?
Dangerous Minds TV show. Okay, premiered this date.
All right, folks out there, how many TV adaptations of films that were not sci-fi worked? I'm curious.
All right, how many seasons? It ran. Oh my goodness. Okay, they got 17 episodes out before its cancellation in March 15th, 1997.
Okay, well, it made it most of a season at that point.
Unfortunately, we're still waiting to see how that first season turned out. My guess is she got another job.
One would imagine. All right, so what was Voyager doing tonight? Well, we actually referenced this episode, I think a couple of episodes before. It was False Prophets, about, hey, what if there were Ferengi in the Delta Quadrant? Not well remembered, but for me, I actually have always enjoyed that. It's been a guilty pleasure of mine. False Prophets. Of course, Voyager, this was not the premiere of Voyager. Voyager actually started airing on September 4th. So they had a head start on Deep Space Nine this season. And if you remember, from last season, Voyager ended with about 4 episodes to go on Deep Space Nine. So they're offsetting them just a touch. The Weekly World News headline might have been spoiled a little bit, but we got ourselves an Octomom here in 1996. Wow. This is, I'm assuming, before there was an actual Octomom.
I mean, anything's possible.
This was, I mean, wait. I take it all back. This was the first Octomom, because we know everything in the Weekly World News is fact-checked and 100% true. So there you go. That's what was going on there.
Look at the male hand they photoshopped in as her hand holding the babies.
That's true. Like, actually, if that's but it's not even in proportion as a male head. Those are giant.
Yeah, that's weird. Okay,
well, you know,
Ow!
It's like AI did it.
Oh, the cat is under. The cat bit my foot. He's under the desk. I didn't know he's under there.
Oh, somebody clipped that out of context. That's like Charlie bit my finger right there live. All right. Apocalypse Rising was directed by James L. Conway, who last directed For the Cause last season, and it has a teleplay by Robert Hewitt Wolf and Ira Stephen Bear, the Big Dog showrunners, executive producers, but also mentions this season staff writers, who I'm assuming contributed to this episode, or maybe they just decided to credit the staff writers occasionally, starting with season 5. Sounds like an Ira Stephen Bear thing to me. But staff writers David Weddle and Bradley Thompson are also credited on this episode. What do you say we hop in to some?
The buttons aren't working, so sorry, I have to do it manual.
Oh, manually?
I know it's not ideal.
Now there we go.
Waste your time with trivial trivia.
Okay. A bunch of stuff here. I think it's interesting. First off, Jadzia Dax, who you would think would make really good sense going undercover as a Klingon, is not part of the mission, despite her knowledge of the Klingon culture, because Terry Farrell was allergic to the Klingon makeup, which is also part of the reasons they changed the look of the Trill before season 1, because Trills used to have a sort of a forehead appliance. But I think for practical reasons, because she's allergic to it, and also, like, you really want to put a goo thing on Terry Farrell? They decided no. This episode was nominated for Emmy Awards for Outstanding Cinematography and Outstanding Makeup. I think both of which well deserved.
No wins, though. No wins.
No wins? Oh. But Star Trek stopped winning at a certain point. They, like, after Next Gen, they didn't really win a lot, and I know this from the sound department. It kept getting nominated, though. So the shot of the damaged runabout, the Rio Grande, was a reused shot of the runabout from body parts from the previous seasons when Kira is baby swapped. which only if you were doing a podcast 30 years later and looking at screenshots every day would you have ever noticed that. But I noticed it for sure. All right, so there's a bunch of stuff here about the writing of this episode and the thought behind it, and I think there's a really interesting piece of information buried in here. So, the writer's primary goal during season 5 in general, and Apocalypse Rising in particular, was to get the show back on the track they had been in season 3, moving forward with the Dominion story. But since the Paramount mandated Klingon War arc, featuring the introduction of Worf, had taken up most of season 4, now that the writers are moving on to the next season, they wanted to end the Klingon conflict and get back to the other story, which is interesting. That was the first time I was aware that the Klingon War was mandated by Paramount.
Yeah. I guess they wanted to get more Klingon on the show because it was popular.
They wanted to do that as the way to introduce Worf, but like, who at Paramount makes that decision? That's really crazy. And while it is sort of a diversion from the main storyline, and I can see from the writer's standpoint being frustrated by that, it didn't feel that way to me, strangely. This continues. However, it was important for the writers not to give the impression that season 4 had simply been a pointless interlude. They didn't wish to simply leap back into the Dominion arc without somehow connecting it to the Klingon arc. So, according to Ira Stephen Bear, we wanted to let people know that we didn't switch horse in midstream. So Apocalypse Rising is an important episode. By having the shapeshifter in there, we're saying season 4 wasn't a mistake. It wasn't the Klingons turning against us. It was a shapeshifter behind it all the way along. And that's what we wanted to do with that episode. I think that's great. That totally makes sense to me. And I think that's why it doesn't feel out of place. Why it had never occurred to me that this was a diversion from the main story, because it is part of the main story. So on the production end of it, Michael Dorn looked forward to seeing his co-stars being subjected to the same heavy Klingon makeup that he had to endure for so many years. He says, when Avery, Renee, and Colum had to be in makeup, I was so happy. It seems like Avery enjoyed it, but you know who didn't? Colum Meaney was extremely uncomfortable with the Klingon makeup and complained a lot about it to Michael Dorn. Dorn found Meaney whining to be hilarious, and his favorite moment of complaining was when Meaney pointed out in shock that what the makeup staffers had done to his teeth. He was also shocked by what he had done to his nails and the fact that he couldn't blink to the glue being added to his eye lines. In fact, Meaney complained so much that Dorn asked the producers never to put him in makeup again.
Yeah, apparently Renee as well was happy to see them suffer, and he said that for sure his appliance was even more uncomfortable than the Klingon stuff, and he had a great quote about Meaney. Oh man, what was it? Oh, he's like, yeah, Colm always gets to run in 5 minutes before we shoot and just like breeze through wardrobe. He's like, it was fun to see him have to sit there for hours. I was like, it's such a cast thing when you get to see your co-stars suffer. We love it.
Mikey.
I'm careful, Keith.
No. No.
I'm careful.
No. There are giant spoilers. You have to stay out of the...
I just read that section, the wrap-up section.
No, absolutely not. You cannot, because there are giant things right now that are happening right now that they reference that are gigantic spoilers. All right. Cannot.
Why did I buy it? Why do I have it?
You can have it when we're done the series. I'm going to confiscate it when I come to your house next week.
That shit's hidden.
You cannot read these.
Okay.
Absolutely not.
All right, you have my word.
I will read you all the good stuff.
I swear on my dead black finger. Okay.
Yeah. Ugh. Although they are never seen very clearly. Oh, I'm so mad. Very clearly on screen.
Who out there wants to volunteer to read the companion? Just send me the notes. I guess I get that in the watch along. People tell me
that's what I do every single week.
That's a good point.
I literally have the notes. You can read my rundown. So they are never very clearly seen on screen. The very statues in the Klingon Hall of Warriors were designed to give an overview of Klingon history. with the statues representing the heroes of different eras. For example, both Kalis and Chang are included. John Eves, who designed the statues, also created several new characters, and in his design he tried to concentrate on the garments worn so as to give a sense of evolution leading into the modern Klingon warrior uniform we see on Next Gen and Deep Space Nine. Yeah, the statues in there, and we do see them a little bit, are so cool. I certainly wish they've got to be in a warehouse somewhere.
Yeah, right. What are they? I wonder what they're made of, though. They're clearly not fully cast, so they must be like some sort of like a foam, or maybe like a plastic shell that they fuse the two sides down the middle, so they're hollow inside.
You could have, although you'd have to make a mold.
Yeah, that's true.
I bet they're just carved out of whatever material is easy to carve quickly.
Yeah, maybe.
But they look great.
Now
they're
you
so
just throw
cool.
them in a 3D print, right, and be done with it.
Well, I mean,
that's huge.
12 feet tall.
Yeah,
that's a pretty. I think that'd be pretty expensive, but really, really cool. And I wish they'd gotten a little bit more screen time, to get the scale of them, because they were really cool. Mike, you want to know who else is really cool?
Keith, I do. Let's see if that button works. Nope.
Yeah.
We'll have to see what's going on there. It was going so well for a few weeks. Yep, that's it right here.
Octomom!
Folks, clearly we need your help. The Patreon, we do some fun stuff over there. Additionally, mostly I watch every one of these episodes, and Keith and I are watching the movies, and you can join us for the paywall watch-alongs. It's a lot of fun. We do the watch-along every week of Deep Space Nine as a live stream, and then we post it. You also get a Patreon feed of all of our shows right to your podcast feed, if that's something you're interested in. But I wanted to make a quick point to our existing patrons and to people who are somewhat interested. I noticed on our Patreon we have a bunch of free patrons who are just kind of like seeing what we're posting. I wanted to let you know that Keith and I have made this such that if you just contribute $1, we open the paywall for all the content. So if you want to do the watch-alongs, you want to do whatever. So you don't have to be free, right? $1. I can't make the content free because of the type of content it is. But we want you to know, like, for those of you, we had a couple of patrons who were at a higher level who just, left me notes and say they couldn't afford it anymore. I want to let you know that we appreciate you, but if you can only give us the buck, give us the buck just to get the stuff. We do not want to put anybody in a financial hardship. So $1, come join us, patreon.com. I'd rather have just a bunch of $1 subscribers. And if you are feeling like you can contribute more to help the show, support the show, please do. But patreon.com/KNDM.
Our purpose is to not financially gatekeep.
Yes.
Because that's not fair. However, if you're a billionaire, you better add some zeros.
Yep. Yeah, we just have
redistribute some wealth.
A couple of long-term people who felt. Also, it is known. Sorry to take the time to do this, but Patreon itself, they have some billing issues. So if you don't think that you've canceled your Patreon, it might have just denied your payment method, because it does that sometimes. It does it to me as well. So give a check. That's all I'm saying. Good time to check in with the Patreon. Patreon.com/KNDM. See what's up.
Yes, and so watching Mike watch these episodes live, if he hasn't read the companion and have it all spoiled for him, is really entertaining.
I get it, Keith. Trust me, I get it.
We're gonna fight all episodes.
That's how I get the. I do just like to peruse to get some pictures. I like.
Well,
the sketches.
that's fair.
I promise I won't read anything ahead. How can I can't even read the week before because you say it's talking about future stuff.
No, you can't read it. No text can be read. I think you can look at the pictures. You have to pretend you're illiterate.
Okay, well, tough one, but I'll go.
I'm totally gonna read it. It's gonna be great. I know the pictures. I understand everything. Hey, so pretend it's a national security briefing. All right, so I don't know. I'm in a weird mood.
Don't look at the stock market.
That's gonna crash. All right, so the last thing I was gonna say about the patron. So watching Mike watch the episodes, super entertaining. I actually watch them sometimes. Like I hop in live sometimes, but this episode I watched Mike watch it the next morning because I found that entertaining.
Yeah,
so.
and we have just like our patrons are super
so
fans of the
smart.
show, and they're smart, and their anecdotes they provide, and the production stuff. It's sort of this podcast in real time with smarter people.
It's like it's the better podcast. It's funnier. It's more insightful. Yeah,
it's worth $1. Is all I'm saying. It's worth $1.
Worth $1.
Yeah.
But thanks to our good friend JD, who actually emailed about this. He had a great idea for our watch along. So once a month, we do a live watch along of one of the films, where Mike and I are on camera watching it. You can watch the movie, and then there's a comment feed, so you can comment and chat with us live, just like you do with Mike watching the show. And so we just did the motion picture. So the next up is Wrath of Khan in April, but coming up in May will be in canon, right? In Deep Space Nine will be when First Contact airs, which is also in timeline correct with Deep Space Nine. So when we get to that point, I think it's between episode 9 and 10 of Deep Space Nine is when First Contact takes place. So we're going to insert that one into our sequential feed.
Oh, sweet. That makes sense.
And watch First Contact, because it doesn't directly have bearing with what's going on in Deep Space Nine, but it does a little bit indirectly. And also it might be when we switch uniforms to the greatest uniforms. So we will. So that's going to be our plan. So definitely,
cool.
Join the Patreon before we do that, because that movie is fierce. And I think Sean worked on it. Maybe we'll ask him to.
Yeah, we got to get him for his next episode on the Patreon too.
Yeah. All right. Whew. Oh my God, we got to move forward. Our guest stars this week include Robert O'Reilly as Gowron, of course, J.G. Hertzler back as Martok, Mark Alaimo back as Gul Dukat, and Casey Biggs here as Damar. We have a lot of the heavy hitters this week. So what do you say we hop into our screening room, Mikey? Okay, here we are, beginning season 5, and some time has passed. A whole lot of shiz has gone down in the off season, and we find out that the Klingons and the Federation are now at full-on war. Yikes. Worf, Kira, and O'Brien are worried about Dax and Sisko, who are off on just a runabout for a meeting with Starfleet. They're late and had to go through Klingon territory to get there. Worf wants to take the Defiant and for a rescue mission, but Kira is in charge of the station and says no, but Worf says, I'm in charge of the Defiant. Interesting here. We don't get to see who wins the fight because the runabout returns damaged. We also see here that Kira is now more pregnant than before and has yet another different hairstyle. The hair's a little darker. I like this version of Kira's hair.
Looks great, yeah.
And I think the adaptation of the uniform for a pregnant is great. It's now a two-piece. Yeah. So Sisko gets there and gives an update on the war. It's not going great, and they are basically stalemated with the Klingons. But now Starfleet has a plan to fix it. They've got to prove that Gowron is a changeling. So they're going to send operatives into Klingon territory to do whatever it takes to prove it. And who are they sending? Sisko, of course. And so what a great teaser. We go in there yes, I want to see this mission. Right away, continues the storyline, continues the stakes. It's pretty good.
My headcanon is that, because, you could make the case of the wormhole that they sure do send Sisko, who's pretty important to the kind of grand scheme of things, into very dangerous scenarios all the time. However, if he's the best you got, right? That just shows you how great he is at negotiation and at these types of situations. So we got to send our best guy.
Well, the reason he's important is because he's good at all of these things. And also, he's right on the front line. I mean, how many other Starfleet captains have interacted with the Changeling?
Mm-hmm.
Let alone had one to be one of his close friends. And like, he is the tip of the spear. So in Act 1, Sisko goes into Quark's, who was oddly cheery. You know why? Because war is good for business.
Yeah.
Sisko is looking for Odo, and Quark says he's super depressed and I can't cheer him up. Sisko finds Odo drinking. He's never had food or drink before, and now he's wrapped up in the bubbles. We've all been there, buddy.
Yeah.
Truly. And it's clear that he's grasping for things to have control over. Which I would imagine, like, the transformation that he went through when you used to have absolute control over your physical autonomy.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and usually, like, we deal with that today, it's sort of metaphorical, but for him, it's like literal, how out of control that must feel.
Yeah, and not to get too far down a science rabbit hole, right? But the assumption being that he had completely different physiology than humans. So now in the human form, he even mentions like ingestion is like a weird kind of feeling, like of things moving through your system. But we didn't even open the can of, thankfully, the gajillion of taste buds you have. And like, watching babies sort of try to compute all of the different information from flavor is really funny to watch. And so seeing Odo kind of even like just the tippiest tip of the iceberg of him going through like what that's all about, like as a grown person and with just experimenting with taste and just being human, 0 to alcoholic, probably very short trip.
Very quick. Yeah. Well, for sure. And I think about it, like, I'm kind of similar this way to Odo in like, I'm kind of walled off and I desperately need control in order to feel safe. And he's sort of used to that. So for me personally, I get very annoyed by sneezing, right? When I sneeze, it makes me angry because I have like this loss of control and it's like, whatever. And I imagine the same thing must be true for Odo.
Hunger.
Odo's never had to sneeze, right? Odo has never had to eat or drink or poop or whatever. Like, he's like all of these things which we take for granted. We've accepted the fact that we have to just sort of deal with these biological things and we don't put that into our world of like what is control, what isn't control. But for him, the interjection of all of these loss of bodily autonomy, because it's not just I'm stuck in a form, but now I've got all of these biological processes that, like, I have a runny nose. He's never had a runny nose before. He's never had to do any of those things. That's gotta be really difficult for him.
Not only that, but what I was thinking about, and that's really fascinating actually, because my thoughts went to, think about how long in their timeline and also sort of just our watching timeline, the seasons of the show, he spent attempting to master,
right, to pretend
the
to
autonomy. No, just that, yes, but being a shapeshifter, right? He built the whole quarters out to just learn how to do that and how to master the different things. Then once you start to sort of, a terrible analogy, I don't know why it popped in my head, but imagine you're a sculptor, right? And you spend years finessing how to do it, and then all of a sudden you're in an accident and you lose your hands, right? And you're like, oh my God, all that invested time in learning that skill, and now it is just, I am incapable of it. I'm sure there are other ways to sculpt, but just follow me on that basic, you know what I mean? At least initially.
No, I think that's a really good point. And I think the other thing that I think about, for somebody with Odo's sense of pride and his, again, this idea, like I'm desperate to control things in my life and how people see me. And he spent a lot of time like trying to be a better shapeshifter, trying to pretend to be human, this, that, the other thing. He also, everything is new to him. So he is like a child again, learning to be freaking potty trained. How embarrassing that has got to be for him to have to go through all of that, like this stuff that is normal to everybody. Everyone else has been doing it for 40 years. He's never done these things before, and trying to mask that and pretend like, oh yeah, I know what I'm doing here, has got to be really stressful for him. So like,
last point on it for me, and I think this goes to just how good the show is, in my opinion. 4 seasons is a good, well, a good chunk of TV, but it's also not that much, right? And if you can feel the length, or at least emotionally feel the length of this journey. If you think back to like when Odo was just like, who am I? Who are my people? Right? The initial start of this quest, it feels so long ago because there have been so many trials and tribulations up to here, but really that's only a couple seasons ago. We went from who am I to, oh, I know who I am, now I have to master it, to, oh, do I even like those people, to I want to be one of those people, to now it's been taken away from me.
I've lost all of it. Yeah. No, and that's and a lot of that is sold by Renee's performance, which is fantastic in this scene. So so Sisko proposes a mission, but Odo feels useless. Sisko does not take depression for an answer. And like you can even see here in the screenshots, like Renee's vulnerability here is heartbreaking.
And I like that Sisko, he's a little firm here, but this first interaction, we have another one later, but this first one is a little more empathetic, where he's saying, I can imagine this is a great deal of coming to terms here. You have some mourning to do.
Yeah. And he subtly, gently does the like, do we need to talk about your drinking, buddy?
Yeah, which I thought was an interesting approach, right? Like they weren't heavy-handed about it, but at the same time, he mentions it, which I thought was really interesting.
He was checking in. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's good friending as well as good captaining.
And I think it was a good point on the writer's point to make sure that like we're not going to make this funny. This is not funny.
Right. Not funny. Yeah. Not funny at all. So we go to the ward room and set up that the Klingons have established their home base in an asteroid field, and that they can't get there using the Defiant cloaked. And they don't know how to prove that Gowron is a changeling, because he's obviously figured out a way around the blood screenings. Worf suggests killing him, and that will force him to return to Goo. Well, that ends up being the plan later. Luckily, Starfleet has 4 gizmos that will force the changeling to Goo. They do need to box him in between them all and turn them on. And they'll only get 1 shot. Although the reason they only get 1 shot, apparently, is that the radiation on multiple exposures is fatal. We're going to go kill them. What do we care if they...
Yeah, that was weird. But what I will credit them with is... How do you take a thing? First of all, it's just the snitch from Harry Potter. That is
Death Star.
That is clearly just a MacGuffin, right?
That pretty much is the Death Star.
Yeah, it is actually. I wonder if that's a subtle.
I'm sure it is.
Yeah, it's clearly just a MacGuffin, right?
Right.
But they do such a great job of making it very specific. Like it's got to be. We have to have 4 of them because we have to create a perimeter, and inside the perimeter, this thing will happen. That I was pretty convinced that this whole mission, and even the way that a little bit later they keep foiling us by people getting in the way. Like we didn't really think through the crowd control aspect of it, but
right.
They really fool us into thinking that this is legit, right? They cover the MacGuffin-ness of it very well, which I give them points for.
Well, I think that's a good point, because I think that the way that you make a MacGuffin feel real is detail.
Yeah, it doesn't have to just be technobabble, right? Even the simplest detail, right? If it was just been 1 of them, you're like MacGuffin. But it's 4. We got to create the perimeter. He's got to be inside the perimeter, so it's important that we all get close. I mean, it's good.
Because it forces you to start thinking about how it works, how do you implement it, and by the time you're doing that, you've accepted it as a thing.
Or you're waiting for, how's it going to break down? How are they going to, how do we... It's cool.
Yeah, you make it real once you put the audience in the position of trying to figure out how to use it.
Mm-hmm.
So they only get 1 shot, but first they've got to get there. And they do so by hitching a ride on Dukat's stolen warbird. Good idea. So Dukat arrives decorated, and this is some great costume work. I think the costume should have been nominated for an Emmy for this too. Storytelling in the costume, because if you look at that, Dukat is decorated with a ton of Klingon stuff that he's clearly taken from the bodies of his enemies. including the baldric. And the other side there is the Klingon spine armor. And he's got on his shoulder, he's got like a head thing. And he has one of the orders of the Batleth that we're going to see pinned on folks. So he is rocking like armor taken from dead Klingons all over the place. They never talk about it, but never mentioned.
The war is ongoing, and he is
the war is
kicking
ongoing.
ass.
And if you're paying attention, there's a ton of storytelling right there just on the costume.
Well done, well said.
Dukat is clearly jealous that somebody has knocked up Kira and assumes it was Shakar. And of course she's like, no, it was Chief O'Brien. Funny bit. There's a really interesting shot from above the promenade, and this would be fun to go back and watch if you're watching, where Dukat and Kira exit the door just as another Bajoran woman in a Kira uniform exits another hallway. It looks like a mirror, but then it's not. And it had to be intentional, but I'm curious what the intent was there to make us think it was a mirror and then have it not be a mirror. Go back and watch that scene, because it was really, I was like, huh, that's interesting. What's going on there? So there's obviously a metaphor that I'm missing because I'm a dum-dum. So Dukat wants to know how they can infiltrate the Klingon headquarters. And Kira shows them that, of course, O'Brien, Odo, and Cisco have been Klingoned. And Avery Brooks, I'll say it now and throughout the entire episode, makes a terrific Klingon.
We said it during the watch along a ton. Well, you watched some of it, but one big claim here from me. Thus far, this is my favorite Avery Brooks scene chewing. I loved him in The Spy That Shagged Me or whatever. Our man Bashir.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Great, but that doesn't even come close on the Mount Rushmore of Avery Brooks takes, and this is so far for me the top.
Well, it makes perfect sense. Klingons are so giant and theatrical and just raw.
When he comes in and he goes, brag all you want, but don't get between me and the blood wine. There's
and
nothing,
the blood wine!
There's nothing better. He's done nothing better in this series than
so
that.
Good.
Yeah.
So, and he's clearly having so much fun. Like, he was like, bring on the makeup. I'll be a Klingon every week.
Yeah, it's so funny to think of, like, Colm, like, sulking between, like, can't wait to get his teeth out between takes, and Avery's just like, let's freaking go!
Yeah, no, 100%. It's like, it was...
You got him chewing, you've got Colm crying, you've got Dorn just like, ha, 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 him and Aubergine high-fiving.
Well, here, you know what? This is only going to make sense to you and to nobody else, but it's like, it's us on tour.
And you in that wig every time.
I'm Avery, like, whoa, we're doing it! And Devin's like, I'm a real actor. What am I doing? Yeah. Like, on a real tour.
Yeah.
And you're standing on the side giggling. That's exactly...
I'm dressed as a 12-year-old, so,
You're dressed as a 12-year-old. Exactly. So, on Dukat's ship, they meet up with Worf, and Dukat teases them. Damar thinks they're all going to die, and foolishly thinks they should just bomb them from orbit, which of course wouldn't work. Dukat is building their identities to add to the Klingon security files.
Cool.
Their plan is to pose as initiates into the Order of the Batleth, where Gowron will be visiting to induct folks, thus giving them a shot at him. Meanwhile, Bashir gives Kira updates on Lieutenant Prawn, who is budding again. Funny. He's going to have another litter.
This scene is incredible. The meta of it all is so good. In fact, it's very clear that they're both pre-broke. Like, they'd done a couple takes where they fully broke out, and this is the best they had.
This is them holding it together.
Yeah, it's like clearly they're out of character. Clearly they're talking to each other, but it's so
just playing
cute
around
that it's totally works in canon too, right?
As it's 100% great. Yeah. No, it's like it's really fun. So Kira is of course nervous about having just one child, and she reminds Bashir rather pointedly that this is all his fault. Take that, fourth wall. Cute. They're also like standing too close to each other for characters who are not romantically
and that's
involved.
Never a face we've ever like. It's the best. It's the most Siddig we've ever seen. You know what I mean?
The Siddig smirk We get right here in that screenshot that we also got last episode.
Smirk, yep.
Like, Siddig is so proud.
He might as well take the camera and just give you this.
Yeah, that's right.
I did that.
Yeah, that's right. Would I be any different? Hell no.
Yeah.
I would be exactly the same.
Which brings us to my second favorite scene. Sorry, spoiler. This scene is great. Where Worf is teaching them how to Klingon is so great.
Yeah, no, it's hilarious. So Worf preps our heroes on how to be Klingon,
By
and of
just
course,
beating them up.
well, that's how Klingons work. They're
just to be clear, because this might be a wormhole later. Worf's makeup is they let his hair down.
They let his hair down, and I believe it's a different forehead appliance.
Okay.
So they changed his. Yeah, I mean, he still very much looks like Worf.
Because if I'm not mistaken, like if you were to walk in to a Klingon post office, right? You had to mail something out, and you saw the Klingon 10 most wanted. Worf's up there, right? He's like number 1. One of them?
He's not wanted. He's not a criminal.
Yeah, but like
He is disliked.
I thought he was dishonored.
Dishonored, yes, but that's not a like.
But that's like a
He's not
big deal there.
Like, I'm trying to figure out what level of
infamy.
reviled and infamy. Like, is Worf like Robert Stone?
People who are being decorated, right, and people who are attending a high decorated ceremony
in the military
would
who
most
are in
likely know those who had been excommunicated.
Or at least some of them would.
Mm-hmm. Like if,
for sure.
Like if Am I gonna yes. If you went to an opening night party, Keith, and Jeffrey Epstein walked in with a long hair wig, you'd probably recognize him, right?
He's there with Cosby.
You'd probably be like,
hey.
or no, yeah, Cosby walks in, but he's got a wig on. You'd be like, I think that's Bill Cosby. Right? Like, you'd be like, should we tell somebody? Don't drink that. Don't drink the punch. I think that's Cosby.
Yeah. He looks awfully Worfish in this,
so like,
for sure.
I feel like it's gonna just spoiler alert. I think that it might creep into wormholes.
Yeah. It's not unfair. Not unfair. Oh my goodness, we've gone so many.
Do not make the Photoshop for us unnecessary.
Yeah, no, please, no. God, we have in the last 30 seconds we have referenced so many problematic people.
Keith, this video got a lot of views. The metadata, the metacrawl really picked it up.
That's so weird. When did we get swatted? Yeah, no, it's gonna happen. All right. Where are we? All right. So they're all too soft, and everybody but Dorn is terribly struggling with their fake teeth. Cisco takes a moment to try to get Odo focused. He's lost all of his confidence, being forced to be a solid. And Cisco says, "What's done is done. Shirking your responsibilities won't make you feel any better about yourself." Which actually, it's Mad Dad, but I think it is what Odo needs to hear here.
Not only that, but it's kind of speaking for the audience, right? We've seen this Odo before. We've seen Brooding Odo. We've gone through that. We've kind of done these beats before. Yes, different circumstances, but we've done it. And so you as an audience member, you're like, oh God, how long is he going to be like this? Because badass Odo's much better than pissy Odo.
And also, like, they're going into like a freaking suicide mission. You know, you have to focus, buddy.
Interestingly, too, I think all of the Worf or all of the Klingon makeup is really good, but I couldn't help but continually to think that Odo, specifically Odo's makeup, makes him look like Star Trek friend of the series. It makes him very Cromwell.
It gives him a very long face, which Cromwell has.
From the second he walked on screen, I could not stop thinking Cromwell.
That's interesting because I don't, but together that sort of very long, sort of bumpy face. Yeah, I'll buy that. All right.
And then somebody in the chat let me know that he's popping up soon.
Oh, he's gonna pop up perhaps in one of our watch-alongs.
Dude, I love that they even like worked his beard into the design of the Avery Klingon.
Oh, the Avery Klingon is fantastic.
This is an action figure that I would drool over.
My buddy, they made one.
Did we look at it already?
Yeah, we have one.
Oh, I gotta go back.
Hold on. Talk for a second.
All right, folks. Well, Keith doesn't like to watch him walk, as longtime viewers will know. But he's back, and he's got our action figure. He's gonna pop his in-ears back in, and we're going to see what I've forgotten, amongst many other things.
All right, so.
Oh, that's pretty good. That's pretty good.
Gotta get out of there. Oh, I mean, it's the whole thing.
I mean, is that Playmates?
Yeah.
I need a CRM is what I need. I need the full detailed.
We all do. I mean, it's a pretty good figure, though.
It's not bad. Yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah, so there you go. They I wish they had made them for everybody, obviously.
They just made him?
They just made Cisco. But anyway, I think it's pretty cool. Got to do a whole nother head sculpt for it. All right. So they get hailed by another bird of prey. Uh-oh. And their hollow filter faker system isn't working. They must have been on the freemium trial and did not upgrade in time. So naturally, instead of having Worf bluff them, Dukat just blows him out of the sky. Ruthless as always. But that's Dukat. Not necessarily wrong considering the mission they're on, but a bunch of people just died.
Yeah, well, we're at war.
We are indeed at war. So they arrive at the base. And, which, AI struggled with that, but I think it's still pretty cool looking. They've got this base in this asteroid field. And O'Brien / mostly Column complains about the teeth, saying it's hard to be funny with these teeth in, which was indeed actually kind of funny. Second time they've just broken the fourth wall this episode. So
I'll bring it up now. I was going to wait for... I want to highlight, and we've talked about this before, so we won't have to spend a lot of time on it, but I want to pre-highlight a wormhole brought by Jason T. Moe because it bothers him. Awesome. It also would have made more sense to bring Dax because she speaks Klingon, and none of these people do. So we're leaning heavily into the universal translator lore of it all, when in reality, everybody's speaking English. When it would be clearly a Klingon only scenario.
Okay. Yes. All right. So I watched you guys have that wormhole. There are two times I wish that I had watched it live and could have hopped in. One is you made a joke about them being a Klingon Kiss band. Mm-hmm. Because it basically looked like Kiss, and you wondered what the name of the band should be? It's obvious. Kill. Instead of Kiss, it's Kill, because they're Klingons.
I'll give you 6 out of 10, but definitely...
Come on, no, that's perfect!
No, what you are...
Go to hell.
As good as you think it is is
it is the
good.
Best idea! No. I am so proud of that. Guys, back me up. Back me up in the comments. The Klingons' Kiss cover band called Kill is 100% the right one. Anyway.
Basically, there is already that. It's called Gwar. But
basic, yeah. So, but your wormhole about the universal translators, that their lips are not going to match. They're going to make it sound like they're saying Klingon, but their lips are not going to match. And yes, 100% that is a wormhole. That is a problem. However, I counter with this. There are more than one language on any planet. On our planet, there's hundreds of languages. And if you're at the UN, right, which essentially this is, you're going to have people speaking a whole mess of different languages. So that if you're on Earth and you're talking to somebody from France, you're hearing English, but they're saying French. And so you're pretty used to, even amongst your own people, the lips not matching what you're hearing.
Yeah.
So
To be fair, I think someone mentioned that in the chat as well. I can't remember who. I can't attribute it to the correct person, but someone did bring that up and said there's probably multiple dialects, et cetera, et cetera. So totally makes sense. But I think that it's fair enough. It's interesting to mull, at least.
Yeah. I mean,
and if not language-based, I would say that just culturally, like, if this is such a high stakes mission, I'd almost rather just have, the 4 people are necessary. Well, it's wonder why they chose the 4 instead of just have Avery and somebody else go down. Save yourself the makeup anyway. Like him and Odo could have done it.
There are 4 MacGuffins, Mike.
It could have been
You
2
need
MacGuffins.
4.
Could have been stereo instead of quad.
No, you need 4 because it's, think about all the figures they didn't produce.
Fair.
Anyway,
Cromwell.
So Ducat is just going to drop them off and peace out because he reasons if they succeed, the war will be over and you won't need a ride. If you fail, you'll be dead and won't need a ride. And I can't argue with Ducat's logic here. So they beam onto the Klingon base, which takes us to Act 3, where we're in a giant hall filled with drunk Klingons and statues of drunk Klingons. Our heroes enter and try to stay in character, and their job is to party with them while they wait for Gowron. Thought the Great Hall set here was really cool. And it's tough to sort of make a great hall of the size of the set that they have and the number of extras they have. But I thought once you add the lighting and the smoke and the fire, it looks terrific.
Yeah, 100%.
Meanwhile, on the promenade, Bashir runs into Jake, who can tell that people are nervous about the Klingons. Jake, now in his early 50s, can see that everyone is rushing because of their anxiety about the war. It's a really good observation for a writer. And I feel like this scene probably most of the time would have been cut.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm really glad that it wasn't. I think it's good to see Jake here and his point of view, but also just like adding the stakes of the world around them. Like, it really is great. And honestly, from these screenshots, just from the screenshots alone, you can see how much Alex Siddig has improved as an actor. Like, these are really invested, composed shots. They both have improved so much, and this scene shows it. I think I really like that.
Yeah, it's good.
That beat there. So Kira calls and says we've got a mass casualties coming in. Another little beat there. We don't see it. It's not the story of the show, but it's just like, oh yeah, all right, stuff's real happening right now. And Jake is afraid for his father, naturally. Back in the hall, a Klingon brags about killing a Starfleet captain that Sisko was friends with in the academy. Sisko attacks him, but luckily, this is perfectly normal behavior for a Klingon. And the 4 heroes drink from a barrel of blood wine. The party is a test of endurance, basically hazing before joining the frat.
There's that statue.
But again, yeah. Both of those scenes reinforce, and there's a war going on. People are dying. Like, this stuff is real. So, and this is where Avery has an amazing line reading. Get in front of my blood wine!
I gotta cut that for the soundboard, actually, because we need to return to it. Yeah.
That's a good idea. I like it. So, they drink all night, but we find out they've taken anti-intoxicants. Luckily. Sisko beats up another random Klingon. He's the best at making himself look like a legit Klingon. And I feel like Sisko, as well as Avery, this is a blast for him.
Just the best.
Then General Martok enters. Now, did you remember Martok from Way of the Warrior?
Yes. I can't remember much of the plot of it, but I remembered him.
Okay, good. And of course, we mentioned him in Way of the Warrior. They're all nervous that he's going to recognize them. But somewhat strangely, he does not. They know Gowron is coming, so they have to set up the emitters. But then Martok grabs O'Brien's shoulder. He looks very familiar after all. O'Brien does a, I think, pretty darn good job of selling his fake backstory. But Martok is still somewhat suspicious. They start setting up the balls, when somebody knocks into Odo and a Klingon grabs it.
So they can't be holding the balls. They have to set the balls up, I guess, because potentially they have to go accept the medal, so they can't be holding it.
I think so, yeah.
Or like put it higher. He's like trying to hide it in this stupid little, like the MacGuffin of that is just kind of ridiculous. But
I mean, they could have at least put a little sticky with some Velcro.
Yeah,
and
like
they
you don't have
stuck
some
it to
sort of
something.
magnets technology. He's like, if I can balance it on this arm.
Mike, we spent so much money on these effing statues. We are going to use them as much as possible.
And it's just some like dweeb who's like, I gotta get a better look. Like, look at that. We can't have it just float. We can't design them to just float.
And why are they gold? Shouldn't they be like black or something less obvious? TV. So in Act 4, Worf luckily comes to the rescue and claims that the emitter is a toy they took from a battle with the Vulcans.
That's cool.
I bought that.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't necessarily buy that Klingon and his like weird mustache, but whatever. So then Gowron enters to drums and fire, and Martok leads them in chanting. Gowron, of course, begins speechifying. They had a ton of extras, and the set is huge.
Hold, please. So, friends of the show will know that one of Keith and I's favorite thing is to see extras being extra or looking at the camera doing something crazy. JD mentioned in the chat that there was an extra who's just like rocking and rolling. You can see him there on the right. And I couldn't, spoiler, I've turned to using AI to grab the screenshots for myself to save myself hours of time. And I missed the screenshot. So JD, being JD.
Did he?
He found it, and it is.
Oh, great, because he mentioned it, and I didn't see what he was. Oh my god!
So.
Oh my god, that's hilarious!
I mean, totally worth it. AI pretty much made the one on the right's face melt, but we got a good clip of.
Oh, thank you for doing that, JD. Because like I saw him mention, I didn't see it when it came up on the review, but now I see it.
That's awesome.
Oh my god!
I put that in the box, Keith, in case you need it for anything.
Oh, that's great. That's great. That's great. So they begin the ceremony, and we see that, as is known, Klingon females are every bit the warriors that the men are, and get all of the respect that they deserve. And I actually looked it up for a point of reference.
So none of that is matte, right? That's fully a set.
At least the bottom half is. Yeah. I don't know if the top half. I mean, it looks like it is full set.
That's awesome. That's what I'm saying.
God, that's gigantic.
It could be really matte cool. Up top. It's tough to tell with the AI, but I think it's
matte.
Practical.
I think it would be tough to do with the hanging chandeliers.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome.
Which makes me think it's real. I think that's legit. Hell yeah, production values from the 90s. So anyway, we see a female Klingon warrior accepting the thing. For a point of reference, in the United States, women were not fully allowed into combat missions until, can you guess, Mike?
98, 99?
2013.
Jesus.
Was when women were fully allowed in combat missions. Good Lord. So Odo sets up the final emitter, and Sisko is about to hit the button when his character is called up to get pinned. And as a wormhole for me, for reasons beyond my understanding, he doesn't just hit the button.
Were they all set? Yeah,
they were all set.
Yeah.
And so he's like, hold on, I want my medal.
To be fair.
And so I think he just wanted to get pinned by Gowron, and just like delayed the whole mission. And Gowron says, "Glory to you and to your house." But then Martok knocks him down. He knows it's Sisko, and they are caught. We begin Act 5. Martok has put all of them in a cell, and he has been looking forward to killing Sisko. And Sisko says, "I'm sorry to disappoint you." And Avery absolutely does the weirdest hand gesture. I don't know if you can see me. "I'm sorry to disappoint you." is what he does with his hands. I don't
maybe the shoulder pads were a little bit constrictive.
So funny. Ridiculous. But Martok sends the guards out, and then they can actually talk. And they all try to talk him into exposing Gowron as a changeling, but the emitters have been destroyed. Gowron resists, but admits that he's suspected. He says, I have known Gowron a long time, and it is no secret we have not always agreed on the way he runs the Empire. He is a politician, too eager to compromise, to talk. Last year, he stopped the attack on Deep Space Nine instead of going to war with the Federation. But then, he changed. Suddenly, he was the one calling for the war. And O'Brien says, I think that would have made you happy. At first it did, but after the war began, he started ignoring the counsel of his generals, throwing aside all wisdom in his pursuit of victory. Our losses continue to mount, and still he listens to no one. No one but the Founders. Martok says there's only one certain way to expose Gowron for what he really is, to prove beyond with a shadow of a doubt that he is a changeling. Gowron must die. Which is all interesting, knowing the twist later, because it's all very credible what he has described, and might actually be somewhat of the truth. Is he talking about himself? Is he talking about Gowron? Interesting. But he continues, you will kill him, not me. So Martok breaks him out of the cell, and they head back into the Great Hall where Gowron is still speechifying. Martok keeps working through and kills more guards. There's a moment there that is just so unbelievably badass. He walks between two guards, just pulls a knife out and stabs them both as he walks past. Totally badass. Now, of course, that wouldn't kill you, and it wouldn't happen in any way like that, but that's TV.
Come on.
So he lets Sisko, O'Brien, and Worf into the hall, but stops Odo at the door. Worf charges at Gowron, and the guards try to step in, but Gowron is perfectly happy to fight Worf. And fight they do. But Martok and Odo watch from the door. Martok says, what are they doing? Why doesn't Sisko just shoot him? Odo says, I have a better question. Why isn't Gowron letting the bodyguards kill Worf? I'll tell you why. Klingon honor. A concept you should be very familiar with. My people, on the other hand, don't care about honor. How did you put it? There will be no honorable combat, no formal challenges. Hardly the words of a Klingon. Tell me, General, did Gowron destroy the Polaron emitters, or did you? We go back to the battle. Eventually, Worf is ready to kill Gowron when Odo calls out and tells him to stop.
Awesome.
He and Martok fight into the room. Ooh, what a great screenshot. I'm using that. Martok is the changeling. And speaking of screenshots, there's a great screenshot of Mike's face when that happens. Martok immediately goo chokes Odo, and Sisko shoots. Then, the changeling having been exposed, everyone shoots to the point where he literally explodes. All right, so Mike, talk about the reveal.
Reveal's great, man. I think the way they figured it out was great. I think the fact that it was Odo that figured it out, because the question I had, which makes sense, but then they, is when they were in the prison cell and they're like, okay, well, we got to kill him. And they're like, no, you're going to kill him. And I'm thinking to myself, well, wouldn't it make sense for him to do it? Because he's the second in command, right? And it'd be right to challenge him or whatever. But I didn't think too hard about it. Like, I was like, okay, well, clearly our hero's got to do it, right?
Right.
But that was a hint, and it was a dangling Chad. And who would pick it up but a former founder who would know that his people, like, it was just perfectly set up. It made me a little sad because I'm like, well, they killed this guy, and he's so great. I love Martok when he's in it, but they didn't really kill him, right? But that's assuming that the founder killed him when he replicated him, but we don't know. He could be out there.
We don't know. We have no idea.
And also I don't think we'd seen before that with enough gunpowder, with enough firepower, you can explode a founder.
Yeah.
They're not impervious to munitions. So that was kind of a learned experience. I just thought it was great. I thought the reveals, I thought it was all great. Using the lore we've built about the Klingons, what we've learned about the founders, and it subtly reminds us once again that Odo's unique intellect and experience as an investigator is what makes him special, not necessarily his goo hammer hand or his anything, you know.
Absolutely.
And I think that's sort of what we take from the episode, and that's the journey of the character. And
I really like that the pieces he put together, and this is, you know, why you have Robert Hewitt Wolf and Ira Stephen Bear as the writers here. It's not some sci-fi MacGuffin that they figured out based on the characteristics of these characters, these species, these things that we have set up long in lore, so that, you know, whether or not you necessarily noticed it right away, it all really makes sense. Mm-hmm. What we know about the Klingons, what we know about the founders, that is how he would put it together. And like, that's the work you have done for seasons, establishing the characteristics of these characters, which is great. So much better than like, oh, he forgot to put the Framistan and the Fossilstats. You know, it's like, it's character based. So later, Gowron shares blood wine with our heroes. He gets it. So the founders misled Odo into thinking I was a spy, hoping that you'd eliminate me and pave the way for that thing imitating Martok to take over the Empire. Sisko says that way the war between the Federation and the Klingons would continue until both sides were destroyed, leaving the Alpha Quadrant wide open for a Dominion invasion. See, this is I think justifies the whole arc. It makes perfect sense. It's the same thing that the Dominion has now done multiple times. Dominion is out there, they're like the CIA, spinning one against another, against another, against another. So you've got the Romulans and the Cardassians working together, but the Klingons fighting the Cardassians, then the Klingons fighting the Federation. And so how many people have died? How many resources have been destroyed? And the Dominion hasn't fired a friggin' shot in our quadrant. So smart. So smart. So the problem is, Gowron still wants the Arrakis sector and the planets. And Sisko says, we'll negotiate. Because us negotiating is the last thing the Dominion wants. So Gowron agrees to a temporary ceasefire and a ride home. But before they do that, in the stage directions, Gowron looks thoughtfully at Worf. There's still some animosity between them, and they both know it. And Gowron says, as to Worf, as for you, you should have killed me when you had the chance. I promise you won't get another. ... Back on Deep Space Nine, Bashir has restored everyone but Odo's look. He points out, as you actually asked about in the last episode, hey, you know, I can make your face into any species you like. But, of course, Odo wants to keep his own. And that is how we end Apocalypse Rising. What do you say we do a little award ceremony?
AlamarEmmys, count to 4. AlamarEmmys, then one more. AlamarEmmys, it's AlamarEmmys time!
Okay. Let us begin, as we always do, with wormholes.
Yeah, the wormholes we talked about. It's sort of would they have noticed that Worf was there? Since, I mean, it's not like they were just like quickly going up on stage or trying to hide, right? They were making themselves very present, very much part of the fray. So if they were to recognize them when they went up on stage, why wouldn't they have recognized them earlier? But knowing the overarching plot, it could very well be that Martok or whomever, like that they said enough to enough people to be like, we also don't know who else amongst that collection of folks is not who they might be.
Well, sure.
Right? So it's not a far stretch to be like, also, it's a whole Clark Kent glasses thing too, right? I mean,
Right.
You kind of suspend your disbelief. And also, it is funny how, I guess one example would be, how like, let's say you have a friend or someone who like gains a bunch of weight, but you don't really recognize it in real
I've been that friend.
You don't really recognize it in real time. But if they go away on a gig and they lose 60 pounds or whatever, and then come back, you're like, holy crap, you got real skinny.
Right,
Like, so
right.
it's very possible that if, seeing Ben Sisko as a Klingon, you wouldn't recognize, oh wait, that's that guy. So it's not that bad.
I don't like I totally buy people not recognizing everybody but Worf, right? Because like they look substantially different, and you're not expecting it as well. Worf is a little tougher, right? Because he is sort of famous. But again, they're in a dimly lit room full of like fire and smoke. Everybody's drunk off their ass, and they're just sort of hanging out.
Yeah, fair.
And so, and they're not looking for him. They're not expecting it to be him. So I could see why it wouldn't be or whatever.
Additionally, I'll say, as far as wormholes go, I'm trying to remember in real time because I've forgotten. We did the Universal Translator thing. Oh, I think the production issues aside, I think if we want to get like to the script of it all, I think their choice of the 4 people is the wormhole that you could point to that has much more weight, right? Like of all the people at their disposal, Dax would have been a better choice. Kira's pregnant, so probably not the best. So Dax's exclusion, I think, would be the wormhole.
Well, I think, yes, Dax would have been very useful for the Klingon cultural parts of it. However, they have Worf. Worf's there. Worf knows even more than Dax does. And I think the inclusion of O'Brien makes sense because he's an engineer who can make sure the gizmos go.
I liked how they gave that like
wrong.
subtle nod to before Dukat blows that ship out of the sky. They give O'Brien like 3 lines to be like, "Oh, I can fiddly bit the fiddly bit. I'm an engineer." And then they tried to like give us a reason, but
that would be the closest thing to a reason, is that like if the gizmo goes wrong, you can fix it. However, Dax is the one who presented the gizmo. Who explains what the gizmo is. Yeah. There's just there's no getting around it. Dax should have been on the mission. So, there you go. My only sort of wormholey parts would be, why doesn't Sisko press the button? Said he goes and gets his pin, but whatever.
Metal's
you
cool,
get a
man.
chance to get pinned by the Chancellor of the Klingon Empire. Like, it can wait.
He's a collector.
He's a collector. He's getting an action figure. Yeah, fair enough. All right, let's talk best moment.
Oh, come on. Man, when Sisko, first of all, them learning to be Klingon and Worf's just beating them up is pretty great. But when Ben Sisko just knocks that Klingon on his ass and then delivers a line, and you're like, there's like half a second where you're like, oh, that might blow your cover. But then he just goes for it. My blood, he yelled it so much that the mic barely could handle it. The mic like broke up.
So, it was peaked the mic.
Yeah, so I was like, oh man, I will never forget that moment. I don't know that you can top it for me as far as like reads go. So that's gonna stick out for me for the rest of the time.
Yeah, no, that's a really good Avery moment. Yeah, I think for me it's gonna be the 2 scenes with him and Odo. With where Renee doesn't have a lot of space and time, pages of dialogue or screen time to really tell the full story of how this change has emotionally impacted him. And I think he does it. I think he really nails it, showing the the depression, the nihilism, the like whatever it is, the anxiety that he's feeling in this scenario here. I buy all of it. And it's all there acted in these smaller scenes. He doesn't really say much. People talk a lot to him. So all of it has to be done with his eyes under all of that appliance. So for me, I think it's Renee's amazing performance of Odo's depression. Frankly, there it is. That's mine. I think we have something to hand out. Is that true?
You get some samples. Hell yeah, they are self-sealing. Here are some samples
For who?
for you.
Oh,
For me? Oh my gosh!
you know, Keith. Better than, and this is great writing, great directing. Better than those scenes with him and Avery, with Renee and Avery, that to piggyback off what you were just talking about, is a scene that's not in the show, I think. We don't get the scene that I think a lesser show or earlier seasons would do, which is then after Odo solves the case, right? Basically, we don't need an attaboy. There's not a scene where Avery's like, you see, we're still important to the team. You're still, like, we've had it a couple previous episodes where we give Worf the wonderful life Quark.
Quark, yeah.
Because Odo doesn't need it. Because Odo realized in the moment where he figures it out that he's necessary. And I think we don't need it to be thrown in. We as an audience get it. He gets it. He's mature enough to not need it from Avery or from anyone. We don't, and I think that the show showing and not telling in that moment is great. In fact, they use that last scene with like a little bit of levity, for him being like, no, I don't need you to change my face, right? And the first time he says, don't change my face, in the season finale, he says it in sort of like I need to wear the scarlet letter. Whereas this time, there's a little more of like, I'm owning my identity. It's subtle, but that shift is there. Awesome.
Yeah.
The other thing I think this episode does as a whole, and it's, knowing the production reasons why they do some stuff sort of infringes on the lore of it all for me. Because in canon, and I mean, it does speak to how great they are at marrying the two most of the time. But I will say that I know that they were just trying to like do what the studio asked and make the Klingon of it all.
Right.
But what I think is important about it here, I know they're even doing it trying to bring Worf in, but what I think it speaks to for the show is that, the Gorn, scary, man. Scary monsters. The Founders are so much more scary. And the reason is because they are playing 5-dimensional chess, baby. Yeah, would it be easy to just attack the Alpha Quadrant? Sure. Would it be easy to actually have Good and pretend it to be Gowron? Yeah, but that's not how we operate, baby. We're going to be Gowron's underling and try to fool you into killing Gowron so that we blow this whole thing up, so that we make a world war and it's your fault, so that after the fallout and we destroy everybody, we can be like, you poked us. We were minding our own business and you started this. You started a war with the Klingons. We had to get involved. Then you came after us. We were just protecting ourselves. It's so level on level on level on level. So it's like, thank goodness we figured it out. And thank goodness, because we almost played right into their hands again. So every time we win, we are never winning because we're smarter, stronger, or faster. We're winning because we got bailed the F out. And like, there's so much at play that even after they got rid of Odo, now we don't even have like that link. Now they're completely divorced of us, right? So they've only found ways to escalate the danger of the Founders for me. And that's great. That's what you want from your bad guy. Opportunity for some like fun scene chewing, some incredible design. No wonder cinematography got a nod in this episode. Costuming, makeup. Great episode, man. This is the premiere. The scene, we mentioned it before, the scene with Bashir and Kira, they used that as their levity scene, and it was cute, and it was sort of letting us in on the whole thing again, which I love. Not much to dislike about this episode. This dialogue was all very strong. They got us out of the hole that I was afraid of, that we were going to just like have spend the first half of the season with Odo refining himself, and I was like, I don't really want to see that all again. Like, I want Odo to be back being Odo. Yes, let's see with him dealing with it, but I don't want it the whole. So they nailed it for me. I really loved it. I have to give it 92 stem bolts.
Yeah. I mean, I'm right there with you. I think it is I think it's very satisfying. I think we see and do some stuff we haven't done before. We spend a lot of time in a place we haven't been before, but that the character work and the plot work is earned, right? It's all, like I said, our solution to this comes from our character work and knowledge of culture and ideas and that kind of stuff, and not from some sci-fi MacGuffin. Right? We have the sci-fi MacGuffin, but we throw it away because that's not what we're here for. We're here to talk about these bigger pieces. And I guess the only thing that I'm going to add here is, you talked about where do our wins come from and what makes the Dominion scary, and how we've sort of been bailed out here and there. And I think you're right. I will also say that our wins have come from and continue to come from the Dominion underestimating the power of our compassion and our ability to communicate. And it's so Star Trek. It's so, like, what is Star Trek? It's about compassion and diversity and communication and tolerance and acceptance, and the ability for disparate people to communicate, right? What are the lasting outcomes of this episode? Well, part of it is getting rid of the Changeling and the Klingon High Command, but it's about getting the Federation and the Klingons to communicate, and who are literally at war with each other. And now, by pitting us against each other, they might have created something much more dangerous to them by getting us to start communicating and perhaps collaborating with better towards the mutual. So the Dominion's continual Achilles heel is underestimating our ability to communicate and collaborate. And I think that is great storytelling. It's consistent with their characters. It is the one thing that they're weak at, right? They're incredibly powerful, they're incredibly smart, but they do not collaborate, they do not negotiate, they do not communicate. They just, stiff arm the entire quadrant. And what is different about the Federation, what is different about our heroes that they haven't faced before? Well, we talk to each other. We collaborate, we communicate, and maybe that is more powerful. A diverse society in collaboration is more powerful than a non-diverse society not collaborating. So it's like it's heady in Star Trek, and it's all progressive ideology, but it also matches the world, and that's what makes Deep Space Nine. It is darker, it is more violent, it is more whatever. It's like it's grittier than Next Gen ever got even close to, but it's still Trek because these are our toolkits. These are the power. This is what makes us powerful. It's the same thing Picard is talking about, but we're using it in this darker, grittier world.
It's interesting. I'd love to read the sort of dissertation of comparing and contrasting the Borg and the Founders, because in many ways they're similar, right? But also, you could also, they're sort of the Borg, the Founders are sort of a biological Borg, if you will. But whereas the Borg was all about, we are assimilating you into us, making you one of the collective, the Founders are very much not interested in that. They want to dominating, right? Which is scarier and is different, right? If you look at sci-fi as a lens back at us, they are different things, equally scary, but different, right? Like, whereas one is technology, kind of the sphere of technology and technology overtaking and us becoming one with technology, and that, where this is very much, dictatorship. This is very much xenophobia. This is very much,
Well, I think phobia is the right word there, because I think what makes the Dominion very different from the Borg is the Dominion is incredibly emotional, and they're scared. All of their moves come from trying to protect them, over protecting themselves.
Well, and I think going forward, my guess is that the other difference is that, they've also sort of had dominion over that quadrant, and
Yep.
they've not dealt with the Alpha Quadrant, who's already sort of dealt with multiple galaxies and societies learning to interact, learning to join, learning to govern, all of those sort of mistakes and iterations over so many years, whereas the Dominion has not had to deal with any of that, basically. They've sort of just been in charge for as long as they've attempted to be.
I think it speaks to the power of diversity. That the Dominion's quadrant has become very like homogeneous. They're the HOA, and every house looks the same. All the people look the same. They're all the same background and color and this, that, the other thing. Whereas our quadrant is a very diverse neighborhood, and we found a way, for the most part, to like be different, but it all exists in the same quadrant. And we're gonna find out which one of those is stronger.
Last thing I'll say before I want to get your stempel. Sorry to jump into that.
No.
The thing that sticks out with me, and I'm sure we talked about it, but I can't get out of my head from the season finale of Broken Link. Yes, the mic drop moment is Gowron is a changeling, but for me, really what it was is that one line Odo says where he says, "When I was in the Great Link, I understood where they're coming from, their fear, their threat, the feeling of threatness," and that made it. That stole from us the ability to say they're evil, they're the villains, they're the bad guys. Because the second you say, "Hey, I kind of get it," that makes it a whole different ball game. Nothing we do, like you said, even if we blow up all the goo guys coming at us, right? There's something fun in video games when you just blast away all the Nazis, because Nazis are evil, right? But then you watch a show like The Zone of Interest or something where you're just like, hey, here's the shitty part, right? Those were like real people who had families and who were making a choice or were forced into a situation, and you're like, oh, you mean it's not just this guy bad, this guy good, this guy bad, this guy good. Life isn't that way, and it's scary, man, and it's difficult. And I love that they gave Odo that line because it makes everything different.
Well, it encapsulates the danger of fear.
Yeah.
What fear does to a person, to a culture,
and how it can be wielded as a weapon.
Absolutely, it is incredibly dangerous, and powerful and universal, and whether you're demagoguing, minorities, whether you're caravans at the border, whatever, you're using our human predilection for fear to survive, and it is so easy to exploit people's fear to your own interests, and like it's if you look at the history of authoritarianism all throughout space and time, it's the exact same 10-step playbook. It's been done exactly the same way every time, and it starts with fear. It starts with making you afraid of the other, making you have to protect yours and your own family, whatever it is. And so you're just demagoguing whatever is the most, basically you pick the most vulnerable people and you make them scary.
And I think that's why, you can dislike a property, you can dislike a show, or you can say, hey, why do you guys waste hundreds of hours of your lives on the internet talking about TV? And the truth is that in many corners of our society, of our civilization, the only way these conversations about demagoguery, fear-based, fear-mongering can take place on any sort of a rational footing is through media, is through art. And that's sci-fi too, right? Because it's like, if you try to tell the story in our world and say like, hey, guess what? Trans people
aren't scary. They're not coming to ruin your life. Immigrants are not going to come and burn down your house. Well, that person has already been programmed to be afraid of that for the last 20 years. Instantly it gets political and scary, and it gets, but you said like, oh, well, these Zeepsorp people, you can see they're not actually trying to attack them. Why are these people so afraid of the Zeepsorp people? It takes away all of that sort of like, right now, right here, and you get to talk about these conceptually, as opposed, it's much easier to talk about something conceptually. So like, oh, the Empire in Star Wars, well, that's not the same thing as whatever Empire in real life, right? But it is, and it's what makes sci-fi great. Anyway,
Keith, give me a number, buddy. Sorry,
got a long way to, so much more to talk about here. But okay, yeah, it gets a 93 for me.
Oh, we're there. Here we are. I said 92.
We're right there. That is Apocalypse Rising. Now, next week we'll be discussing The Ship. And so if you're wondering what this was on IMDb, 8.2. It was the 27th best rated episode of Deep Space Nine on IMDb. Wow, guys, if you are still watching this, you have
It's
really...
only going to be 90 minutes, all told. We always feel it feels
crazy.
longer because we spend a lot of time, but...
We do a lot of talking. Thank you so much for joining us on this whole journey. Hopefully, now that we're in season 5, we're really getting into the fun stuff. This has been an absolute blast for me, and I know it was for Mike. Check out our other shows, and most importantly, join our Patreon, patreon.com/KNM.
We could really, you know what? We could really use your support, guys.
Till then, once again, this has been Keith and Mike Watch Deep Space Nine. Thank you for watching K&M Entertainment. If you enjoyed our particular brand of nonsense, please like and subscribe. Or become one of our patrons at patreon.com/KNM.